Violence in any shape and form, whether it's physical, sexual, mental, psychological, and spiritual, is a crime and it's wrong. And it is impacting our daily life. In this interview, we are exploring it. Watch this. Greetings. My name is Poran, and this is a Guftagoo program at the Skyrise Media Society. The violence in Vancouver streets and the violence in general in our societies is a civic issue that we need to talk about. The impact of violence in our civilians and in our people and communities at times are huge, and we need to explore what is going on and what are the issue and how we can talk more about the community safety and impact of violence. So I need to acknowledge that I live and work in the unceded land of Squamish people, Tsleil-Waututh, and masculine people, and we are always grateful for having this opportunity to be part of this beautiful British Columbia. So today I have a co-worker and a counselor who is working in Vancouver area, and this is Robert. So I want Robert, if you can just explain who you are and what's your experiences of seeing violence in the streets of Vancouver.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me on the show, Pran. I'm Robert. I have an office downtown, and I live in the area in Vancouver. And I've been working for many years, and I've seen the rates of violence seem to increase, and the number of extremity of the violence has gotten seemingly worse. I'm certainly seeing in our clinic the rise of PTSD and anxiety related to events that are, happening here in the city and surrounding areas. Quite of an impact on clients that are coming in today.
Mhm. So you are looking at the violence from a mental health standpoint, which is absolutely correct. What about other aspect of violence in terms of the physical? I mean, the fear that instills in people. And walking down the street in Vancouver downtown area, at times I hear from many people that is scary. They don't know who is there and what's going to happen.
Well, it's a traumatic experience. Sometimes watching something just on the news, even if you don't know the people involved, it can be so, real for people. It can really start to hit home, and you start to recognize, oh, this is the area that I live in, and just knowing that something traumatic has happened, and there's a realistic, danger to your well-being. That can be enough for somebody to develop symptoms of PTSD, having anxiety, flashbacks, heart palpitations, sleepless nights. You kind of name it, it can happen. And then people can be, starting to walk around, the streets, and people might actually start to avoid walking around the streets as one of those telltale signs of PTSD.
Mhm.
But if you have to get there to work or to something, you can really start to have that rise of anxiety just by going into these areas. People don't feel safe. They're triggering a sense of not feeling safe, not feeling okay in the city, and it can stir up a lot of things for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And this is what I hear from people. I don't know about your experiences. You can share it. I mean, especially seniors, they are telling me, seniors who live in Vancouver area or downtown Vancouver, they are saying that it's scary at times to go out and walk, or if they want to go get something or just have a fresh air. So that impact kind of is scary at times. I feel like the isolation, the violence, the violence that is happening related to isolation is huge.
It is big. In fact, I was just doing a workshop with at a senior's home, and I can tell that it is on the minds, and unfortunately, I believe the statistics would say that people that are elderly or disabled in some way, they're at an increased risk for violence because they are perceived to be that much more vulnerable. So they unfortunately would be potentially be a target, and that can really increase the sense of anxiety or perceived danger for those individuals. So it's something to be aware of.
Hmm. So, what are the stories you're hearing from your clients, your people in Vancouver area? I mean, you mentioned this workshop. I'm sure you have done many other workshops before. What are the stories that they are sharing?
Yeah, workshops and interviews too, about these events, and it's not necessarily just for what's happening here. It can also stir up old things from other past experiences when the individual felt unsafe before in their life too. So it can become like a double whammy, kind of add insult to injury here. It can stir up a lot of distress in people, especially there are cases in our streets where there's been stabbings and violence, and seemingly there's nobody doing anything, even though they're right there, just drinking their coffee like normal, and meanwhile somebody's being stabbed to death, and so that kind of discrepancy can be incredibly distressing for people, not knowing why there's the bystander apathy thing is happening there. So a lot of anxiety, can people are walking around and they're coming into my office and expressing that they're feeling unsafe to be living in the streets. Maybe they want to move, maybe they or they can't because they have to work and they feel strapped here and stuck, and yet at the same time this is going on there, and so there's a real feeling of powerlessness or helplessness for a lot of individuals, not
Mhm.
knowing what they can do or what the city's doing or not doing to address this issue. And it's unfortunately it's a multifaceted issue, I
Mhm.
believe. But certainly it's what I can say is there's a lot of distressed people.
Mm. Many years ago, I was working um, with an individual, and he had sat in jail, been in jail for many years because of robberies and a lot of different issues. And I asked him, what was your motivation? What was going on in your mind? Because I was so interested to know what was he thinking. He's like, this is many years ago. He was saying that I was so angry at everybody, at my society, and my community, and my parents, everybody. So I was walking around, and if there was a car that was unlocked, I want to kind of get into that and do something, or a
Mhm.
door that was unlocked. So he was very kind of authentic in explaining what was going on in his mind. So I'm always wondering, okay, how many of these people we have around? What do you
Right.
think?
I don't know how many of those people we have around, but when I
Mm,
hear a story like that, my trauma informed brain. I'm a certified EMDR therapist and approved EMDR consultant, and I always think about what's going on for that individual's nervous system when they're in that situation, and I can
mm,
see the symptom of trauma sort of trail leading back to something has happened to this individual. It doesn't have to be a big T trauma, what we consider to be like an assault or a violence like we're talking about. Trauma can be anything, is from being yelled at a lot, growing up, or having an alcoholic parent or something that's just not available. That can be a traumatic experience. So what I would imagine for individuals like that, like you're describing, they have this really this disturbance inside, and when they see something that they can feel power of some kind, then that would be sort of like a drug, if you will, to relieve the feeling of powerlessness that they might have just had. And then all of a sudden now their nervous system has that dopamine hit. They just got this, CD player or whatever. I'm guessing I'm dating myself,
Mm.
an iPhone or something like that from the car, and now I feel powerful again. So it's not necessarily the person's car or the city they might be. It's an individual trauma that they're projecting onto the situation. So we see lots of cases like that, and I've caught.
And
Yeah,
go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, mirroring that story that you were saying, I've had clients where, because of the violence, they're scared to go into the parking garages. They stay, like all day long at work because they don't want to go in and out, and they try to avoid going to the office because of that fear that they're going to be in the parking garage and something could happen. So,
Mhm.
it's a scary thing.
It is scary. I was reading an article a long time ago. I don't remember the name of the authors, unfortunately, but I remember that this research was kind of talking about inequalities in a community or in a society leads to violence. And what you're describing in terms of a kind of need for power reminds me of that concept. What do you think about it?
I believe that we have larger well in a large group of people we have a lot of individual people, and so as much as we can take a macro perspective, we can also take a micro perspective, and it's often what's going on in that larger group. It's a symptom or of many smaller symptoms leading up to that. So if there's one person that feels powerless in a group of 100,000 or 10 million people, that's not such a major issue for the city. But if you've got 10,000 people or a million people feeling powerless, then that becomes a much scarier situation. And then of course you have what we call groupthink, or when you start to think of the masses, and that sort of what starts to be this sort of a consciousness almost that runs on its own, and people can get very easily swept up into that mentality, and then not really be fully in control of what's going on. So it's again, I really back to that powerlessness, and one of the responses that any individual will have when we feel powerless is to potentially is to move into that fight or flight or freeze response. And I tell my clients, like, even a squirrel, if cornered, can become dangerous.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
thing could attack you. So it
Mhm.
really doesn't matter. Anybody or many people could be capable of many different things under the right
Mhm.
circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This is leading to the concept of kind of not only mental health, but what happens to our health in general. I mean, if let's say that person who is attacking is in the fight and flight and freeze mode, so what is happening to the victim that is not knowing what's going on, and how much fear, how much distrust to the society can inflict, right? So that's something serious. Mhm.
It's you're right. There's a health response, within, like, our bodies are designed, if you will, or we've evolved depending on your belief system, to have these short peaks of high exertion. Like, we're running away
Mhm.
from a saber-toothed tiger, we get away, whew, we're okay, and now our nervous system comes down. However, what happens when it doesn't come down, right? So there was the traumatic experience, and then after that there's the news, and then people are talking about it, and then what many of my clients report as being possibly even worse than the original trauma is we call secondary trauma. So if you had
Mhm.
survived an assault, let's say, and you had the
Mhm.
courage to say tell a doctor or a family member, and then they don't believe you, that could be
Mhm.
that much more devastating, or even worse than that, and potentially is them blaming you for,
Mhm.
well, you probably asked for it to happen because you were
Mhm.
wearing such and such, or you were in that area
Mhm.
at this time, you were asking for it, and that kind of thing can really just devastate people. So we want to be very careful about how we approach these sorts of things from from a whole social perspective.
And your office is in downtown Vancouver. I'm wondering how often do you think about it when you walk towards your office? If someone kind of gonna attack you from behind, if that is something, I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm that triggered myself personally, because when I work with people, I get them through the trauma. I mean, if you were to statistically, what's the actual odds of you being attacked? It might not be that high, but the fear of it being attacked, is, and nobody wants to be that person that is the unlucky one, that is the victim. So I it's not like I'm not vigilant at all. I'm not, I do see when I look around, I'm looking, who's around me, but I'm not walking around, in a constant state of anxiety.
Mhm.
Now that's my experience, but somebody else might have a very different experience. I can't assume, and I can't make up what other people might experience, but I believe that there's probably
Yeah.
I'm one of a few that
Yeah.
aren't scared, but maybe there's quite a few that are.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking this because I know many people are really hyper vigilant in terms of um, fearing something bad might happen because they have heard or they are seeing the news about what is going on in the streets of Vancouver or in the metro or the buses or whatever. Of course, we know that usually media shows the situations like this, but there is no reason to believe that this is happening every day and everywhere, right? So, but some people take it as granted that, oh, the streets are not safe.
Correct, and I think for those people that jumped or come to that conclusion that therefore I'm never safe, that will be
Mhm.
activating their own life story of other times in their life when they felt unsafe, and so then their
Mhm.
nervous system is recalling everything that's ever happened to them when they felt that way, because unfortunately in the body doesn't know the difference between what's on the news right now you just watched 20 seconds ago versus what happened to your body 20 years ago. In the
Mhm.
body it's happening right now, so anytime that
Mhm.
trigger occurs, it's a real time in this moment. So unfortunately, that's a traumatized response. But I mean, there's hope. You can always seek out therapy and change the
Mhm.
way that that person is moving around in the world.
Yeah, and you're talking about services. I mean, I'm a counselor myself. I know that many people cannot afford coming to the private sessions. However, there are tons of places they are offering public places they are offering counseling. So, what do you suggest people do in terms of if they are afraid and this is something that they have been impacted highly? What can people do?
Well, that's a really great question. I think you're touching on the range of possibilities. What types of resources does this individual have access to? Of course, counseling services will range. There are services, that are free for some places, or low cost, and then all the way up to, 250, 300, $400 an hour, depending on who you work with, right? So that can really range. However, there are many, 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 many free resources out there. In fact, I have my own channel that has self-help resources on there, the Mental Health Show with Robert Grigore. There's books out there, self-help books. You could talk to a doctor. You could talk to your pastor, or your whatever religious organization. If you're part of that, you can talk to that
Mhm.
person. You can talk to friends and colleagues that have gone through it. Ask them for help. Maybe with some suggestions. Maybe don't ask them to reprocess your life story because maybe they're not qualified, right? But you might be able to just start to ask some questions. And I think the number one thing that would really hurt somebody is to stay silent, is to not say anything and to just remain
Mhm.
suffering in silence. That's what's really, really damaging for us. As we're a social
Mhm.
species, and so we're supposed to reach out and for help when we need it, and ask for help. And the resources really are out there.
And yeah, I appreciate you talking about it because there are so many newcomers who may not know about the services. And once something like this happened, I remember many years ago, a person who was under refugee status here and very traumatized himself from the country that he was coming from. So he was in Vancouver downtown, was taking a bus, and a guy from just randomly he was hit by someone very badly, and the story is like, oh, he fell on the street and things happened, ambulance came, etc. However, he was so paralyzed of the
Mhm.
fear of being reported as, I mean, or feeling that, oh, he's going to be deported because he has been victimized, you
Yeah.
know. So he was scared to death in terms of making a police report. Or police had asked him, or he's like, no, 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 that's okay, nothing happened. But he was traumatized a long time. And so that's why, I mean, these programs are important for our newcomer communities to know, in Vancouver area especially, to know that there are services, there are police stations, victim services, etc., and they are willing to help, you know. And
Yeah.
it's hard to for newcomers to believe that there are such a places available.
Absolutely, and we also have to consider where the newcomers coming from and why they're coming here. They may have been escaping some sort of persecution, and so they just want to maybe keep a low profile until they're residents, full residents, and so that's really scary. So when you think about counseling, one of the things that I would share for those individuals is that it's confidential. The therapist isn't here looking to turn you in or to like, we're not police officers, we're not judges. That's not our job, unless of course you tell us that you are about to harm somebody or actually harm yourself and it's a serious thing. Then of course we have to take that matter seriously. But this is a confidential place where people should feel safe and secure to share what's going on with them, and the importance of getting the medical attention and psychological help cannot be underscored enough.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was actually reading and I went online and find an article by Vancouver Sun. I think it was about 6 months ago, and they were reporting that there is lower rate of crime there was in 2023 compared to the years of, I think the peak was somewhere between 2004 to 6 and 7. So still, although there is lower rate of crime, however, at times we are seeing horrible scenes, a horrible situation happening that is quite disturbing. So I don't know if it's because the crime has evolved, become more violent and more violent, you know, than the petty crime that was happening perhaps before. So what do you think about this?
That's a good observation. I'm not too sure, specifically about the stats, but I do know that some statistics that I have been, researching and would notice was that quite a few of the crimes, in the past had not been reported. So that might be what maybe is could be happening now to some degree, that some things are not being reported, but they're actually still happening. But perhaps I think we're more connected these days than ever before. So we just turn on the phone and we can have all kinds of news stories from the algorithms out there that are maybe pushing these things. I know that there's some protections and some of the platforms to not allow some of these things to be seen, but it's I was just in a pharmacy the other day, and happened to look on the TV, and there was that was one of the stories about a stabbing, and it wasn't like sort of just hinting at it. There was some pretty graphic scenes. They did everything except for show the act itself. So it's sort of what we do see, everything that we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, like all of our senses all feed into our nervous system, and so we're being consumed and I think maybe bombarded by this stuff so often that it's entering our system, and it just makes that much worse. So the way that trauma will compound and compound and compound and compound, it's not like the stuff of the past didn't affect us. It still affects us today. So there's probably a combination of a few different things that are going on.
So basically, the PTSD situation you're talking about, I mean, that's impact on our health and on our communities, right? So the impact is getting more or worse or kind of more prevalent. I know we don't have any statistic. I don't ask for that, but kind of, in my view, I think because of the gravity of some scenes we are seeing on that social media thing, I mean, the impact must be higher. From a civic standpoint, the impact on people's health, people's kind of ability to move around safely, feeling safe. I mean, that's a lot. And this is huge, I think.
Well, absolutely. So, some statistics that I am aware of is that since the pandemic, the anxiety and depression rates are up. I believe
Mhm.
32% since last I checked, since the pandemic. So is that meaning that there's more violence or not? I'm not sure, but certainly the effects of what's been going on for people is increased. And that's felt in the body. This is like anxiety and depression aren't just illnesses, or like we don't catch it like we catch the flu or something like that, or a cold. It's a nervous system response. So there's these different stages in our nervous system. We have this ventral vagal, calm, grounded, peaceful state that we should be in. This is where we want to be, called the green zone
Mhm.
here. And that's where we really want to be. That's just, we're on vacation, our feet are in the sand, or just totally relaxed, right? Maybe a meditation state. This is that. And then as you get higher, you get into that hyper aroused state. This is that fight or flight that can happen, right? This is where you start with frustration and anxiousness, or up to rage, maybe even, or panic. And then from there, we can enter into a dorsal vagal response, which is that freeze response. This is where depression lives, and numbness and dissociation and addictions and stuff are all up there. And so it's a nervous system response. And over time, that can have incredibly debilitating effects on one's health, really
Mhm.
straining the system here. And I believe mental health, last I checked in 2023, and addiction together is a combined $91 billion economic strain on our system. That is a
Mhm.
lot of money. And that's going on from people missing work, perhaps, or needing to welfare or social assistance or healthcare, and all of these things together are a huge impact. So stress in the body it's okay in short little doses, right? Because that's what we're meant to do. We go for a run or something like that. That's a good stress for a little bit. But if it's a sustained thing all the time, then our bodies are going to start to break down. That's where diseases start to kick in. That's when we start
Mhm.
to have heart attacks, and we have diabetes, and these different stresses on the body really impact us. And so it's something that we really need to take control of, as a whole society, of course, starting with
Mhm.
each individual. But it would be great if there was maybe more of a assistance from the higher ups, if you will.
Absolutely. And although we talk about violence from a very general perspective, I think I want to kind of name the concept of or challenges with sexual, for example, sexual violence, physical violence, mental violence. I mean, psychological violence, scaring people to death or scaring people or threatening people or things like that. I mean, at times there is not much of physical violence around, but those type of non-visible or invisible violence are huge. Have
Absolutely.
you any experience in that area?
Yeah, in all of the areas, I'd say both personal and professional. I've had quite the history. I've been a survivor of 2 domestic violence situations myself, and I've treated people in those situations many times. So something that's very hot right now in terms of awareness out there in the public domain is narcissistic abuse, and that can have a whole range of of applications, and so many people out there aren't even aware what it constitutes as sexual assault or as sexual abuse, and such as a partner withdrawing consent, even say married and then withdrawing consent. That is a sexual assault. If somebody is saying no, or their body language is saying no, that's an assault. And so when you think about something like a sexual assault, there's other aspects to it, where individuals may not be aware. Number one, they might be afraid of the stigma attached to it. They might be they might have a shutdown response. They might have all different types of histories where that came from in the past as well, where they weren't believed perhaps in the or when people are in say an abusive relationship, emotionally abusive relationship, not really understanding what is going on because they're not aware of it. And so when they might be experiencing what we heard, you might hear gaslighting, where they just start to feel like their experience isn't real. It's kind of like they feel like they're going crazy, right? Even though we as counselors might be able to see it, it'd be very difficult for people out there to see. And there's a great a resource I always share. So it's called abuseandrelationships.org. And that's a terrific website that shows all different types of abuse on there. It's very, very helpful. So
Yeah, that's very important to know. And I know that the children in school, they learn a lot about abuse and impact of abuse and so on. I mean, years ago, I was volunteering for Canadian Red Cross, and actually part of my volunteer job was to go to school and talk about how violence starts. I mean, the difference between physical, sexual, mental, psychological abuse. And I was quite amazed to see how children are smart and they get it. And honestly, and how much they know. I mean, this was from grade 6 to 8, and also 9 to 11. So basically, I mean, the younger children, they're like, yes, we know, yes, we have heard about it, yes, we understand. So kind of very kind of inspired by those children, because I didn't know about these things until later on in my adult life. And so yeah, it's good to have that awareness, and really I appreciate that you share this situation of that you have been victim of domestic violence, because many people think that it's only females getting a victim of domestic violence, but this is not true, we know that.
yes, I think statistically, women are more likely to be victims of the abuse. However, it really does happen both ways, and like what you said about children, I think that's a testament to how times are changing, and to the parents out there that are trying to educate as much as possible, and the school systems and people like yourself coming in. Thank you for your service in doing that. I know of some Red Cross is a great organization, and I know Stigma Free Mental Health Society. They're doing that sort of thing too, which is just terrific to see. The more awareness is out there, the more likely people are to learn and to reach out and to talk to get help. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And talking about services, I know that when people make a police report or so on, they can receive some counseling services by the Crime Victim Assistance Program. And this is something that most people don't know about. If you
Yeah, it's a
can
great
explain on that. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. From my past working at BC Society for Males Survivors of Sexual Abuse, I became very well aware of Crime Victims Assistance Program, and how beneficial it is. Um, And this is a very confidential government program that's out there that will help individuals that are victims of crime. There does need to be a police report, as far as I'm last aware of. But once there's a police report in place, you can reach out to Crime Victims Assistance Program, and they'll set you up with some sort of assistance. And it could be the difference between somebody getting access to help, and it may
Mhm.
pay entirely for a therapist, or it may pay most of the therapist rate, and then there's just a little bit out of pocket that you pay for the particular therapist. But it's going to be very, very helpful for many people out there. So hopefully more people are aware of it. So.
And that's why we are doing this program. Skyrise Media Society is a kind of nonprofit agency, and offering this type of program just for raising awareness about that. I mean, not only the civic issue, however, the services. What can we do about the challenges that are there, and what kind of services we can get? That's why, and I really appreciate you being our guest today. So, concerned about, not concerned, but looking at time, I want to see if you have some last words, and yeah, how we can wrap up the program after that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that well, if you've been tuning into this program right now, there's obviously something in you that's saying that this is important to you, and you're needing something out of this. So hopefully, number one, you're able to get some of that met by this show. And I think there's certainly a part of you that might be interested in finding some help. Maybe not even for yourself. Maybe it's for a family member, or a friend of yours, or a spouse,
Mhm.
or somebody that's close to you. But I think, like I said earlier, I'll echo it, that the most important thing that one can do is to reach out and start to get help. Because the thing with many of these issues, I really don't believe that people can, what I call, white knuckle it through and just get through it. Because trauma is
Mhm.
something that just gets worse and worse and worse as time goes on. And there is, unlike the old myths out there that time heals all wounds. That's not really the case with trauma. In fact, your brain gets worse, your hippocampus shrinks, and you have less ability to handle these things. So I think that you've listened to this, you've tuned in this so far. Definitely reach out to somebody. I'm certainly willing to point people in the right direction,
Mhm.
and help people get the help that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you, Robert. And I want to say to our viewers that violence, whether at home or on the streets or anywhere, is a crime, and there is always help available to receive. So, thank you very much, Robert. And here I want to kind of encourage our viewers to join. And if you have anything to share with us, any type of stories, any subjects you want to share with us, and be our guest, we would be happy to have you. And you can email us at skyrisemediasociety at gmail.com, and we reach back and plan for an interview. So thank you very much, Robert. And it was nice seeing you again after all these years. We have been co-workers before, but missed you. So until next time, and yeah, thank you very much for watching. Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much for having me. Bye.